You ever find yourself in a fight you never wanted, and before you know it, you're leading a full-blown rebellion? Yeah, that's pretty much how I ended up as the most wanted man in Heron Bay, at least in the eyes of our infamous HOA president, Karen Schelling. And all I wanted was to fix my late uncle's roof, maybe get a few quiet years out by the lake, nothing fancy. Turns out in this neighborhood, a new roof is enough to spark a war. See, my Uncle Raymond left me his house last fall, a two-story, on the water-white fences, mailboxes that look like they cost more than my first car, the kind of place where everything's neat and there's an HOA for every blade of grass. I figured play by the rules, keep my head down, fix what's broken, right? The roof was about 3 storms away from caving in. So as a licensed contractor, I did what anyone with a brain would: drew up blueprints, filed permits, sent everything to the architectural review. They approved it. I had papers, stamps, emails, the whole bureaucratic parade. Monday morning, my crew and I started peeling off old shingles, halfway done by lunch. Everything humming along until I hear tires screech, and this platinum blonde lady in a suit comes barreling across my lawn like she's storming the beaches of Normandy. That was my intro to Karen Schelling. Clipboard gripped so hard you'd think it was a weapon, eyes locked on me like she was sizing up her next trophy. She tells me I'm in direct violation of HOA Code 4.2, that the modern shingles are industrial, that Heron Bay has standards. I explain calm as I can that the materials were on my spec sheet, that I had every signature. She just crushes the approval in her fist, tells me she has final discretion, and if I don't stop, there will be consequences. I probably should have known then she was serious. Instead, I told my crew to keep working. She didn't have the power to stop a permitted build. But Karen didn't get where she was by letting things go. 2 days later, I'm enjoying my sandwich on the porch when I get a fat envelope, HOA seal in the corner, no return address, classic. I open it standing barefoot on the gravel and just about choke 15 grand in fines, violations for unapproved materials and aggressive construction activity, whatever the hell that means, and a threat of an emergency hearing if I don't comply in 72 hours. It would have been funny if it wasn't so insane. I fired off a reply: permits, photos, architectural approval, notarized letter, the works. Told them in not so many words any effort to stop me would count as bad faith enforcement and could end in civil litigation. Next morning, Karen fires back with a vengeance, emails and texts from neighbors saying she doubled everyone's dues, emergency legal defense fund, and community image repair, all because of me. My next-door neighbor, Carl, old firefighter with a limp and zero patience, rings my doorbell. She doubled my dues over your roof. I show him the letter. He just grunts. Looks like a roof to me. Maria across the street stops by that night, says she's been bullied by warning letters for years. I didn't realize we could say no, she tells me, almost whispering. The mood started to shift then. The more Karen tried to tighten her grip, the more folks started drifting over, bringing coffee or their own tales of HOA abuse. Carl had years of invoices showing dues climbing with nothing to show for it. Maria had paid fines for porch plants. Another neighbor, Jess, got fined $400 because her kid played trumpet on the porch. No appeal, no hearing, just a bill in the mail. It didn't take a genius to see the rot ran deeper than my roof. I started poking around, requested the full HOA bylaws, not the fluffy welcome packet, the real stuff filed with the state. Buried in there was a rule: get 30% of homeowners to sign. You can call a general meeting and put anything up for a vote. Well, challenge accepted. I hit the pavement, went door to door, showed folks the paperwork, my violation, the rising dues, and got 38 signatures, way more than needed. Here's where the plot thickens. A buddy from my old contracting days put me in touch with Evelyn Mooney, a retired CPA who'd made a career sniffing out fraud. She tells me, get the books. I'll sniff out the rest. Not easy. Karen kept the HOA finances vague and full of fluff, but I tracked down a landscaping company that turned out to be owned by her own son, Dale. No website, no address, just a P.O. box and a shell LLC. When I sent Evelyn what I found, she almost cackled. Classic slush fund. She dug in, started matching payments, and the picture turned ugly. Over 200 grand funneled to Karen's family business in just 3 years. Then just as I started organizing the big meeting, Karen pulls her dirtiest move yet, anonymous complaints to the county. Suddenly, I get a notice for mandatory inspection allegations of unlicensed work, unapproved materials, you name it. But the county inspector, a decent guy named Walter, saw through the nonsense. My permits were perfect, my site clean, and after 40 minutes he wished me luck and said somebody hates losing. That was a good line. You'd think that would slow Karen down, but instead my truck gets 2 tires slashed the next night. Cameras catch a blurry figure. It's Dale's car, clear as day. Sheriff's deputy takes the report and just shrugs, HOA drama. Huh? That's when I knew I was way past roof repairs. Karen was out for blood. So I doubled down. Compiled evidence, filed police reports, backed up footage, even handed a binder to my lawyer and the state HOA ombudsman. Meanwhile, Evelyn kept digging fake vendors, missing HOA money checks for personal travel, even the HOA insurance fund used to pay Karen's own house premiums. By the time the special meeting rolled around at the Methodist church, folks were ready for blood. Over 70% showed up packed into folding chairs, sharing snacks and stories. When I presented the evidence, shell companies, forged invoices, and a mountain of theft, the place erupted. Someone shouted, "She used our money for a cruise." And suddenly everyone had a story, threats, fines, paint colors. Even kids never paid for yard work. Right then, Mrs. Langley, sweet old lady from the end of the street, stands up and says, "She never paid my grandson $1 for mowing." The whole room just lost it. Carl, gruff as ever, called for a vote. We had the numbers more than enough. When Karen stormed in hissing about community values and dangerous men, nobody so much as flinched. She left empty-handed. And by sundown, Heron Bay had a new leadership committee with me helping draft new bylaws. But you know, snakes don't disappear just because you chase them out the garden. 2 days later, I get a certified letter duct taped to my front door, Karen suing me for defamation, civil sabotage, you name it. $10 million. My lawyer, Rick, barely blinks. She's just trying to drown you in paperwork, he says. And sure enough, 2 days later, we get served. But with all the evidence, it's Karen who ends up in the hot seat. Her lawsuit gets tossed. We counter for malicious prosecution. And best part, force her to open every bank account, every HOA record, all under oath. That's when everything really unravels. Turns out not only was Karen stealing, but her sabotage went even further. Vandalism on my property glue in my locks. Threats to former board members. Diane Romero, an ex-treasurer, comes forward with a folder of threats and handwritten notes Karen had bullied or bought off anyone who stood in her way. Finally, after months of legal wrangling, Karen's world collapses. She's indicted on embezzlement, fraud, vandalism, her mugshots on the evening news. In court, she represents herself raving about political sabotage and ungrateful neighbors, but nobody's buying it. The evidence is overwhelming: fake landscaping contracts, forged approvals, HOA funds funneled into her own pockets. The jury's out for less than 3 hours before finding her guilty on all counts. 10 years, no early release assets seized, and the old guard swept away. After that, Heron Bay started to breathe again. New leadership, open books, bylaws written by the people for the people. I turned down any official role, said I was happy being the guy with the fixed roof and the loudest table saw. Karen's house was auctioned off, the neighborhood fund got restored, and we even got a little council set up with real transparency. Neighbors actually talked to each other again. Last I heard, Karen was stuck in a medium security prison, still fighting rules, but this time her HOA queen days were over. Sometimes I stand on my deck, coffee in hand, look out at the roof I rebuilt, and just marvel at how far we came. We lost a tyrant, sure, but what we really gained was a neighborhood. So let me ask you, was I wrong to fight back? Should a community ever put up with this kind of petty tyranny, or did we finally get it right? Tell me what you think. Down below, what would you have done if you were in my shoes? Justice overkill or just another day in suburbia.